What is history and how historians gather and process information? Let us look at the objectives. What is history? You'll find that there are varying definitions of what history is. Let us look at some. History is the study of past events set in a chronological order. The word history has been derived from the Greek word historia. It means narration of the past. The scholars who help to reconstruct the stories of the past are called historians. Again, what is history? Definition: the study and interpretation of the past through records. Recollection, analysis, study of all aspects of the past, including written documents, artifacts, art, scientific records such as DNA and bone structure, oral traditions, and culture. What is history? History attempts to describe and explain the past. Historians are generally concerned with the causes, consequences, and significance of events. History is distinct from myths and narratives about the past, in that history is exclusively concerned with what can be demonstrated through reasoned use of evidence. What is history? From the Greek word historia meaning inquiry, a learning by inquiry. While there is a need to be inquisitive, to search for the truth, history involves a close examination of a matter in search for true information. Critical analytical thinking and evidence. History is not storytelling. It's not bedtime stories. What is history? History is an account of the past. Accounts narrative differ depending on one's perspective. We rely on evidence to construct our past. We must question the reliability of each piece of evidence. Any single piece of evidence is insufficient. We must consult multiple pieces of evidence in order to build a plausible account. What is history? Is it enough to define it as the study of the past, or concerned with evidence, the present traces of the past, significance, concerned with significant events, explanation and understanding, not only describing the past but also explaining it? Alright, finally, so what is history? It's the study of the people and events of the past. A historian's job is to study, examine the causes, reasons that something happened in the past, explain why things are the way they are, and help us to understand the present and to be able to make decisions about the future. Before we go any further, we have to look at the elements of history. When we are trying to study history, we must look at the following 5 elements: time, when did it happen, place, people, events, and the culture that we're studying. To give a very good account of history, if you're writing it, you must answer the following questions: who, where, when, why, and how. If you're writing any account of history and these questions are not answered, it means that you're not doing a very good job. Who did it happen to? Where did it happen? When did it happen? How did it happen? And most importantly, why did it happen? Let us look at some basic reasons why we study history. We can learn how to research things on our own. We can learn from other people's mistakes. History helps you understand the past. It is interesting. It inspires us. It helps us to understand why things are like they are today. For example, laws. We can gain valuable skills from studying history, explaining and evaluating events. It can teach us why and how things change or why they remain the same. The importance of history. To know about past events, what actually happened. To know about your own identity, your own culture, your own customs. It provides a fuller picture of matters under study, since history also touches on various issues such as social, political, cultural, etc. What is the real reason why we study history though? History is studied as a way to gain life skills, the main ones being problem solving and critical thinking. An excellent knowledge and understanding of people, events, and contexts from a range of historical periods and historical concepts and processes is something that you learn from studying history as well. The ability to think critically about history and communicate ideas very confidently in styles appropriate for a wide range of audiences, meaning you have the ability to explain any situation to anybody, no matter their intellectual ability. The ability to consistently support, evaluate, and challenge your own and others' view using detailed, appropriate, and accurate historical evidence derived from a wide range of sources. So if you're on the corner and somebody's talking about something, you have the ability to draw on evidence, research, provide factual information about a discussion. The ability to think, reflect, debate, discuss, and evaluate the past, formulating and refining questions and lines of inquiry. You can develop a passion for history, an enthusiastic engagement in learning, which involves a sense of curiosity about the past and your understanding of how and why people interpret the past in different ways. So you'll have two persons telling the same story, but they're giving a different perspective on the story. It can be a black-white issue, a young-old issue, a cultural issue, coming from one country versus the other. Everybody's perspective will be different, but you develop the ability to explain your own perspective by using evidence, not your opinion, but based on factual information. You develop a respect for historical evidence and the ability to make robust and critical use of it to support your explanation and judgments. Finally, you develop a desire to embrace challenging activities, including opportunities to undertake high-quality research across a wide range of historical topics. When you open your history textbook, do you ever wonder how the information got there? The book was printed in the year 2000, but the information being discussed happened in the 1800s. Did the person that wrote this book lived in the 1800s? Did they witness the event? How did this information get there? This person is known as a historian. On screen we have some characteristics of a historian. You will realize that the characteristics being displayed are similar to the characteristics that you as a student should learn once you have completed your study of history. So that makes you a budding historian. How is history written? As history is a study of the past, it is a historian's first task to look for things that survived from the past, wherever they can be found. Then, they must go on to make sure that these remnants or relics are genuine artifacts and not fake. Finally, the historian must give meaning to these remnants of the past by interpreting them. They must try to show how these remnants are related to one another. By doing so, a mental picture is made of the past. What are historical sources? A historical source is something that tells us about history. It is evidence. It may be a document, a picture, a sound recording, a book, a film, a television program, or an object. There are two main types of historical sources: primary sources and secondary sources. Primary source is something that originates from the past. A secondary source is something that has been written or made recently about the past. When studying history, we use something called a timeline. Whenever you're presenting historical information, chronology is very important. The Georgian calendar is the global standard for the measurement of dates. Despite originating in the Western Christian tradition, its Its use has spread throughout the world and now transcends religious, cultural, and linguistic boundaries. As most people are now aware, the Georgian calendar is based on the supposed birth date of Jesus Christ. Subsequent years count up from this event and are accompanied by either AD or CE, while preceding years count down from it and are accompanied by either BC or BCE. Let us look at this in a little bit more detail.
5 minutes or less. I've had a lot of questions about this, so here we go. Keeping track of time dates back to the ancient Mesopotamians. There were many civilizations that had their own system of keeping track of years, but our modern system of numbering years was not developed until AD 525 by a man named Dionysius Exiguus. Sorry for the bad pronunciation. Dionysius invented the system that has school children across the globe confused about what AD and BC stand for. So what do these letters mean? BC stands for before Christ. The term BC denotes before the start of the era. For example, when you read 2500 BC out loud, it sounds like this: 2,500 years before the birth of Christ. Naturally, it counts down to the birth of Christ. AD is an abbreviation for a Latin term, Anno Domini, which translates to in the year of the Lord. The term AD denotes years after the beginning of this era. When writing the dates, AD comes before the numbers. This labeling system has been in heavy use for close to 1,500 years. So there's a common misconception out there, and that it's that AD stands for after death, as in after the death of Jesus. That doesn't even make any sense. This would mean that the 33 years commonly associated with the life of Jesus would not be included in either of the BC or AD timescales. What's even more confusing to school children of the world is how these dates work. Think of time as a number line. All the years that came before Christ are counting down to his birth, or if you're an athlete, those are negative numbers. All the years after the birth of Jesus go up. These are positive numbers. Now I know what you're thinking. What if you don't believe in JC? Well, this dating system has been the unofficial global standard for many years. The system gained popularity when Charlemagne, or his friends called him Charles the Great, began using this system to date acts of government. Although there's a new way to refer to these years, the concept behind naming the years remains rooted in religion. So what do we use now? Well, since the later part of the 20th century, the use of BCE and CE have been popularized. Authors that wanted a more secular approach to the writing began referring to the years formerly known as before Christ to BCE, which stands for before the Common Era. The years formerly known as ED will now be referred to as CE, which stands for the Common Era. More and more books and scholars are using these terms in their writings. Well, are you wrong if you use the old method? No. Since the years in both methods of labeling are equivalent, you will not be punished for using either method. Just keep in mind you may get some looks of disgust from people who have no idea what you're talking about. It happens to me a lot. So ever since the Mesopotamians, people have been keeping track of time. It wasn't until 800s that people started using the AD-BC method. Because the world was different in the 800s, our methods of labeling years have changed. For now, you're correct if you use either method of dating years. Well, that's our 5 minutes or less.